So, this story begins in the year 1480. It tells of Prince Vlad of Romania and his wife, Elizabeth, who were living happily together. Vlad loved his wife immensely and showered her with new gifts every day. Even today, he brought a gold music box for Elizabeth. They were enjoying themselves together. But their joy was short-lived, as the prince received news that war had broken out in the country. The situation had become extremely dire, as the enemy had reached the castle walls. Preparing to fight the enemy, Vlad ordered his men to take Elizabeth to a secure castle. Before leaving, he had the Pope declare that God was responsible for the safety of Elizabeth, his wife. Prince Vlad had now left for war, while the princess, on the other hand, had left for a secure castle. Elizabeth is shown riding a horse through the forest, accompanied by a few other soldiers. However, the enemy, already aware of Elizabeth's secret route and the castle, is hiding in a tree and attacks Elizabeth as soon as they arrive. Elizabeth escapes the attack, but two of her soldiers fall off their horses. Sensing danger, Elizabeth runs ahead. A battle scene is shown. Vlad, along with his soldiers, devises a plan to block the enemy's path. They bring numerous oil barrels near the castle walls and set them on fire. As the barrels catch fire, they push them back. As the barrels move toward the enemy flees from the fire and retreats within minutes. A fierce battle ensues. Vlad's soldiers advance toward the enemy, fighting the remaining enemies. Swords are used, heads are chopped off, and people fall. The battlefield quickly turns into a river of blood. Ultimately, Prince Vlad and his army prevail over their enemies, thanks to Vlad's brilliant plan. Shortly after, Prince Vlad's entire army, carrying the heads of their enemies on their spears, arrives at their enemy's castle. Before they can celebrate their victory, Vlad receives news that Elizabeth has been attacked. He abandons everything and rushes to Elizabeth. Meanwhile, it's shown that Elizabeth had changed her route to escape the enemy. She had gone into a snowy area, unmindful of the dangers that lay ahead. She was simply riding her horse at a fast pace. The area where Elizabeth was at this time was named the Forest of Wolves because it was home to numerous wolves. Numerous traps had been set beneath the snow to capture and kill them. Elizabeth's soldiers' horses fall into these traps, but Elizabeth evades them and continues running. Then, finally, her horse also gets caught in a trap. She falls to the ground along with the horse. The enemies surround her, and just then, Vlad arrives to save her. Vlad was about to reach her very close, but Vlad's horse also got caught in a trap. Vlad showed his speed. Jumping off his horse, he ran to Elizabeth. A man was about to attack Elizabeth. From a distance, Vlad threw his sword at him, and the sword accidentally pierced through the enemy's body and hit Elizabeth. Vlad screamed, "No!" and ran and picked Elizabeth up in his arms. But Elizabeth was dead. Elizabeth's blood had stained Vlad's hands red, and Vlad's tears were now falling on the snow. After regaining consciousness, Vlad immediately went to the Pope. He was mad with anger and grief. He told the Pope, "God didn't protect my wife, and I kept fighting wars and killing people in her name." He grabbed the Pope by the throat and said, "Now pray. Get someone to perform a miracle from your God that will bring back Elizabeth." But no one could do anything. When the Pope remained silent, Vlad exploded with rage and picked up the crucifix lying nearby, stepped into his bag, and stabbed him to death. Afterward, he laughed so terrifyingly that everyone was terrified. He shouted loudly, "I don't believe in God anymore." At this moment, a wind blew, and we saw tears of blood flowing from the statue of Jesus. Vlad laughed maniacally once more, and frightened by his laughter, his close associates dragged him out of the church. This time, it was revealed that Vlad was no longer human. He knew that every good soul gets a chance to return to this world, albeit centuries later, and he had decided to wait for his wife to return. The scene cuts to 400 years later. In a church, we see a psychic doctor who has come to speak to a priest about a specific patient. The doctors were unable to understand what was ailing the patient, and her recovery was crucial because the patient was the niece of the Queen of England, and the Queen was deeply worried about her. The priest comes to the mental hospital to meet the patient. After arriving, they enter a tunnel through a secret door. The priest is introduced to the patient, Maria. The doctors tell the priest about Maria's history, that she had done something she shouldn't have done in church, and that she had since fallen into hysteria. She had developed a mental illness that caused her to spiral out of control. When her records were retrieved for treatment, it was discovered that Maria was born in 1795. This was impossible. If she was truly born in 1795, she should have been 130 years old today. However, Maria appeared to be only 30. The doctor tells the priest, "This is what brought me here. I think this is a devilish creature." During their conversation, Maria, who had been asleep, awakens. The priest approaches her and attempts to speak to her. As she turns, he sees her large teeth, and this is when the priest realizes that Maria is, in fact, a vampire. The priest is extremely excited and declares that she is the first vampire ever captured alive. The doctors are incredulous. To convince them, the priest opens the window, and the light from the window burns Maria's skin. We've always known that vampires never go out in sunlight. Their skin burns, and this is the most obvious sign of a vampire. Afterward, when the priest brings a crucifix in front of Maria, she burns it in anger. The priest then forcibly seizes the doctor's assistant, cuts his palm, and forces a few drops of his blood into her, hoping to regain some control. While administering the blood, the priest notices bite marks on Maria's neck. This reveals to the priest that Maria was once a human and had been bitten by a vampire and turned into a vampire. The priest tells the doctor that the church is still searching for the vampire who is turning everyone into vampires. Hearing this, Maria herself explains that her master is a prince who is searching for his princess, and that one day, in his search for her, he will surely come here. A cut to the other side shows us a man named Jonathan, who has arrived in another city. For some unknown reason, people were afraid to enter this city. His carriage driver refuses to let him go further, saying, "Wolves rule here. I'm not going any further." He gives him a parable to protect him from the wolves, but throws away his luggage. Even more bizarrely, he also gives him a crucifix, although he didn't need a crucifix to protect himself from the wolves. Jonathan reaches his destination. He has to enter a castle, but the back door of the castle suddenly closes automatically. Once inside, he meets Count Dracula, who introduces himself as Prince Vlad. This means this Dracula is the same Prince Vlad we saw 400 years ago. In the next scene, we see Dracula and Jonathan at the dinner table. This time, he has brought a deal for Prince Vlad. He didn't know that Prince Vlad was Dracula. While he was taking some papers out of his bag, the crucifix given to him by the cart driver fell out. Seeing the crucifix, Dracula asked him, "Do you believe in God?" To which he replied, "No, someone gifted it to me." With that, he got down to work, and Dracula, taking advantage of his preoccupation, picked up the crucifix and threw it into the fire. He then showed Jonathan his room, specifically telling him not to leave it at night. Dracula himself began listening to music, but Jonathan began reading a book in the room that contained the history of the castle. On one page of the castle, the portrait also has a picture of her youth. But the strange thing is that the picture of the princess is missing. A cut to the other side shows that the priest has now gone to Maria's house. The priest tells Maria's fiancé that Maria is much better than before. But the evil hasn't completely gone away from her yet. So we'll keep her with us for a few more days. While engaging Maria's fiancé in conversation, he sneaks into Maria's room. He needs to find anything related to vampires, and there he finds the same picture of Elizabeth that was torn from the book Jonathan was reading on the other side. Here we see Jonathan, who can't sleep, decides to wander the castle. While wandering, he sees light coming from behind a door. As the door opens, he sees stairs that lead him down a beautiful basement. A coffin was placed in the middle of the basement, and when Jonathan opened it, he found Dracula sleeping inside. Before Jonathan could close the coffin, Dracula suddenly grabbed his hand and told him, "You shouldn't have left your room." Suddenly, strange creatures appeared, knocking Jonathan unconscious. These creatures are called gargoyles. These are vampire creatures who work for Dracula and the vampires. Jonathan regained consciousness while the gargoyles were hanging Jonathan upside down with chains. Dracula ordered a large bowl to be placed under Jonathan and then cut his neck. Jonathan was terrified and, looking at Dracula, asked, "How could God create such dangerous creatures?" Dracula laughed a strange, terrifying laugh at this. He then told him, "You're about to die. If you have any last wish, please tell me." Jonathan didn't want anything. Yes, but he did want to know how Prince Vlad became Dracula. As his last wish, he asks Dracula to tell him the story of Dracula. This was the first time anyone had asked Dracula such a request. Responding to Jonathan's words, Dracula orders the gargoyles to bring Jonathan down. Now he will tell Jonathan his story. Dracula tells him everything from the battle to how Elizabeth died, all of which we've already seen in the movie. Dracula explains, "I've always known that good souls are always resurrected. That's why I waited for her, but that wait remained a wait." Years passed. Dracula remained locked in his castle. He was now jealous of humans, thinking that at least they could find peace by dying, but Draculas live for thousands of years. One day, he suffers another fit of loneliness, and in a fit of rage, he breaks Elizabeth's robe. But now, there's nothing left but Elizabeth's bones. This act only fueled Dracula's obsession with Elizabeth, and he devised a new plan. He decided to create a perfume. He researched the world, using the most beautiful and fragrant flowers from around the world to create a perfume that could cast a magical spell on everyone. He explains, "I first applied that perfume in Italy, and then all the women started running after me. The scent of that perfume brought everything under Dracula's control. He could even make everyone at parties dance to his tune." One day, he was at a similar party in France, where many women were present. He reapplied the perfume, and this time, he realized he had finally found Elizabeth. He went after her. When he touched the woman, he realized it wasn't Elizabeth. He had come so close to his goal that he was devastated. He had lost the courage to search for Elizabeth. So he hatched a new plan. He would use the women to find Elizabeth. With that thought in mind, he began biting everyone at the party, turning them into vampires. Maria was also at the party, having become a vampire that day. Now that so many women were working for him, Dracula's hopes grew. Dracula had grown quite old, so he decided not to leave his castle. He began hiring gargoyles to do his work. The gargoyles brought him a great deal of wealth, and he used this wealth to find Elizabeth. Jonathan tells Dracula, "I understand your love. Love is genuine. I know this too. I love my fiancée very much." Saying this, he shows Dracula his locket containing a picture of his fiancée. Upon seeing the picture, Dracula goes mad because the girl in the picture, Jonathan's fiancée, was actually Elizabeth, reborn, in the form of Jonathan's fiancée. Jonathan doesn't understand Dracula's words, and Dracula, loving Jonathan, spares his life because it was because of him that he reunited with his long-lost love, Elizabeth. Now that his search is over, he needs to quickly become beautiful and young, for which he needs a lot of blood. He puts all the gargoyles to work. Meanwhile, in Paris, the priest shows everyone a picture of Elizabeth and says that they must find such a woman. Dracula is searching for this woman, and by finding such a woman, they can reach Dracula. The priest explains that Dracula wasn't actually born Dracula. He was a normal human, but he did something very wrong to God, causing him to be cursed and become Dracula. The priest explains that according to their holy books, if they kill Dracula, all the vampires he created will become human again. And if Dracula sincerely apologizes to God, God will lift the curse not only from Dracula but also from all those he has turned into vampires. The doctor's assistant, standing behind Elizabeth, looks up and says, "What a coincidence! A woman with exactly the same appearance has come to the waiting area to meet Maria. Maria and the girl were very good friends, and we know she's from Jonathan's family." The next scene shows Dracula disguised as a monk and entering the church. Once inside, he applies his magical perfume, which causes all the nuns to go crazy after him, and he eventually starts drinking everyone's blood, hoping to become younger by drinking more blood. The scene cuts to Dracula's castle, where Jonathan, having broken his chains, is trying to escape using a blanket. Just then, a gargoyle arrives and cuts Jonathan's blanket, causing him to fall. Luckily, he survives. At the time, the place where he fell was an ocean, but due to the winter, it had turned to ice. Jonathan began running towards it. The gargoyles also tried to catch him, but the ice began to break beneath their feet. Some gargoyles drowned, and in fear, the others did not follow Jonathan, allowing him to escape. The scene cuts to show that Dracula had finally arrived at the mental hospital where Maria was. This time, he had come back young. He looked exactly like the old Prince Vlad, young, handsome, and charming. Applying his magical perfume, he controls everyone there and reaches Maria's room. He was very happy with Maria because she had actually befriended Mina, the girl who possessed Elizabeth's soul. As a reward, He kills the doctor's assistant and gives her his blood. After which, he takes Maria away from there. In the morning, the priest and the doctor discover that Maria has disappeared from their hospital and the doctor's assistant has now become a vampire. Seeing this, the priest understands that Dracula had come there looking for Elizabeth. He also knows that Mina is Elizabeth. Therefore, he understands that Mina's life is also in danger. The scene cuts to Mina. Maria has come to meet her. Mina is surprised that Maria has completely recovered so quickly. Maria embraces her and says, "Yes, look, I'm completely cured. The doctors have discharged me. Let's celebrate this." Maria had deliberately brought her to the same hotel where Dracula was already staying, and at first sight of Mina, Dracula's time seemed to stop. Tears began to flow from his eyes. He couldn't control himself and automatically went to Mina. When he kissed Mina's hand, flashes of the past came flooding back to her. Mina became confused, freed her hand, and ran away. Mina had been enjoying herself inside the hotel all this time. Dracula kept following her, unnoticed. She went inside the haunted house and got scared, but Dracula immediately grabbed her from behind. Then, Mina went to the shooting booth, where Dracula taught her how to use a gun. At this point, Mina was repeatedly haunted by visions from her past. Mina repeatedly shook them off, unable to believe them. Dracula repeatedly called her Elizabeth and spoke to her, trying to remind her that she used to be Elizabeth. But Mina couldn't remember anything and left. Dracula then followed her to her hotel room and gifted her the same music box he had gifted Elizabeth at the beginning of the movie. Listening to its music brought back many memories. But this time, she began to wonder if Dracula was casting a spell on her. Dracula told her the truth. He had a perfume that could control everyone. But he promised, "I have never used it on you, nor will I ever use it on you." Saying this, she threw the perfume into the fire, as she had created it solely to find Elizabeth. Confused, Mina ran away. As she arrived home, she saw that her fiancé, Jonathan, had returned home in a very bad state. The priest and the doctor were treating him. The priest then told Mina that Jonathan had escaped from Dracula, a demon who controlled his subjects with Dracula perfume and then bit them to turn them into vampires. Mina was confused. This meant that everything Dracula was saying was true. Confused, she left Jonathan and went back to her room. She opened the music box again, and while listening to the music, she remembered all her old memories. While she was lost in these memories, Dracula suddenly appeared before her. She backed away in fear. But Dracula told her, "I know everything you were thinking, and it's all true." With this, the two become very close, and when Mina realizes that Dracula is her true love, she embraces him. They spend a lot of time together, and at one point, Dracula bites her neck, turning her into a vampire. Mina was confused. Dracula told her, "I didn't make you my prey, and I never intended to. I was just making you like myself, so that you and I could live together for thousands of years." Outside, the priest also smelled the same perfume Dracula used. The priest realized Dracula was there. As he went into Mina's room, he saw that Mina was also missing. He realized that Dracula had definitely come there and taken Mina away. A cut is shown to Maria, who was with her fiancé, trying to turn him into a vampire by biting him while engaging him in conversation. But the priest arrived in time, saving her friend. Maria went mad with rage. Seeing her plan fail, she rushed towards the priest to kill him. Before she could do anything, Jonathan beheaded her with his sword. Her head and body were completely separated. Yet, her body continued to move violently. The priest realized she wouldn't die that way. So he took his crucifix and stabbed her through her heart, ending her life. The scene cuts to Romania, where the castle was bustling with activity. 2 coffins were brought inside, containing Dracula and Mina. The gargoyles met them and welcomed Mina warmly. They had also prepared Elizabeth's clothes for Mina, which Mina put on. Before they could get lost in their joy, the